is trauma an inevitable part of growing up, or is the normal process of growing up for a human being possible without having to go through some form of trauma? Even the separation from the parent could be a traumatic one for the child, right? So what is that trauma, and how is that different from something which could be a pathology?
So the thing is, trauma is not about the scale of the event. It's about what remained unresolved, right? So basically, if after a traumatic event, there is psychological safety being restored by your parents, by your family, by your compassionate systems around you, you can manage a lot of adversity in life. That's how we are wired. As individuals, we're actually very resilient as human beings. So what I would differentiate here is basically, yes, there is a pendulum of, let's say, strength and suffering, which builds character, which is important. Strength and struggle, all of that is important. We can't create a snowflake generation out there, who hasn't seen any struggle, and it that's not possible, I think, and it probably wouldn't happen. But yes, protect. Even with parenting, right? We say that if you overprotect the child, then it will also be problematic. Parents struggle to find the right sort of um, threshold into which they can expose their children to some level of struggle, but also make sure that they become stronger individuals for adult life. But when it comes to trauma, when childhood trauma, developmental trauma, we're talking about physical abuse. If you're talking about sexual abuse, if you're talking about things like neglect or sense of abandonment of an infant, all of these things.
How is neglect connected to trauma? Because it's not abuse.
Yeah, that's something which is being studied extensively in psychological research as well, because abuse is more dramatic in nature. So people think that that's the only way of having a significant, sort of mental deterioration for a child. Even neglect, where there is, a situation where you don't have an emotional support system, even as a child or as an infant. And for children, this is also in research, that up until 5 to 6 years of their age, they need to feel like they're the center of the universe. That's how they sort of develop their self worth before they start growing up. So that's an important aspect. And then neglect makes you doubt your self worth.
Right. So if you are a child between 0 and 5 years of age and you suffer from emotional neglect from your parents to the extent that it becomes a traumatic element in your childhood,
Yeah.
you may be able to retrieve a memory of abuse, but you really may not be able to retrieve a memory of neglect because it's not an event.
Yeah.
It's a state of it's a condition of existence for you as an infant. So how do you then go back or revisit this experience of neglect and heal from it, if neglect is what has been the case?
I mean, I will not mince my words. It's a difficult one because it creates a cloud of confusion. Even when you go to therapy, you don't have easy memories to access your experience from. The therapist may help you make sense of it and build a narrative as to why you're struggling in terms of your self worth or your confidence or being able to manage your emotions. Because in childhood, the emotions, the memories are repressed. So technically, you don't have the cognitive or the mental ability to actually process it. So it takes a deep seat sort of in your existence, like a blueprint. And that ends up being like an instinct or a temperament you develop as you grow up, right? So it's important that it's understood that neglect can also have significant psychological harm for a child. Because if you think from an infant perspective, imagine that a baby is crying and there's no one to cater to for hours. In comparison to a baby which cries and there's instantly a mother who appears or a father who appears, feeds the child, loves the child, smiles, all that kind of conversation which you have through your expressions, all of that is very valuable to make the baby or the infant feel that you're there. and that once they ask for help, someone will reach out. So all of this is sort of getting embedded in your schema, even if you don't remember it as a clear memory. And in fact, even abuse is very difficult to remember for a lot of people if it happens early on. Neglect, for sure, is the most confusing of it all.
Right. And is avoidant behavior, I think you refer to it in the book, is that also sort of linked to trauma?
So we develop certain attachment styles with a primary caregiver. This is research done by Mary Ainsworth and John Bowlby in the 1970s through an experiment called Stranger Situation, where they tried to understand how an infant behaves, in the presence of their mother or in the presence or absence of a stranger who walks into a room when their mother is there and when their mother is not there. And they figured that there are broadly two types of attachment styles. One is a secure attachment style and one is insecure. Within insecure, we have this avoidant and we have anxious, ambivalent attachment styles. Avoidant is when the child just seems like they are indifferent, or they want to just sort of go on their own and they don't want to show emotion, and they want to, let's say, close themselves off in a way. That indifference doesn't mean that it's not affecting them, but that's an avoidant way of approaching the emotional turmoil they're feeling inside. Anxious is when they actually get helpless in terms of, clinging, crying, seeking some sort of emotional support. Even when the parent is soothing, they're unable to get soothed. So all of that is a very anxious way of the child growing up. And of course, how your primary caregiver is responding to you in that moment over obviously a period of time in your childhood is establishing that dynamic and pattern throughout your childhood. And research suggests that you do replicate it in your adult relationships later in some form or the other, because that has become part of your instinct, your temperament. Whether you shut down in an emotional conversation with your partner or you suddenly sort of, become very anxious. For anxious people, even if there's a minor disagreement in a fight with their partner, it would feel like a very big sort of conflict which cannot be resolved.
Given that so many people are likely to have had insecure attachment styles, I'm sure majority of the population have gone through these kinds of childhoods. So if you're looking at an adult romantic relationship, is there like a particular kind of a match that might work better than some other kind of match?
Instead of astrology, should we go for this?
Yeah, should an avoidant pattern attachment style person, would he or she get along better with an anxious attachment style person or an avoidant attachment style person?
Of course, the ideal world is secure attachment with secure attachment. But an avoidant and anxious attachment is usually considered to be one of the worst combinations, because one person really wants to resolve, is feeling very helpless and sad and angry, perhaps crying, and the other person just wants to shut the room door or just wants to go out for a walk and doesn't want to have any conversation at all, at least in that very moment. But again, with psychology, I always say this, it's probabilistic, it's not deterministic. This is something I've written in the book here and there as well. We can rewire things, we can change things. Of course, we need to be aware of it in the first place, but it's highly possible. These are all probabilities, these are all likelihoods of how we are turning out to be, and we can take stock and try to change our patterns.